Since the very beginning of human history, the meanings attributed to matter, mass, and physical objects have actually represented a thin layer on the surface of a great illusion. We perceive the world through the hard surfaces we touch, the lights we see, and the temperatures we feel. However, when we descend deeper, into the dark and silent world of subatomic levels, what we discover here is not matter or objects, but a pure and continuous flow of data. One of the most striking facts put forward by modern physics states this: at the foundation of the universe lies a truth shaped not by matter or energy, but by the structure of information. The position of an atom in spacetime, the movement of an electron surrounding the nucleus, or the millisecond details of nuclear reactions at the center of stars, all of these are recorded as data packets inscribed into the cosmic memory of the universe. Information is the most fundamental and immutable building block of the universe. The laws of physics are based on a sharp principle of determinism, where the state of the universe at one moment completely determines the next. If you had access to a data set containing the positions, velocities, and quantum states of all particles in a universe, you could not only predict the future but also watch the past as if rewinding a tape. This theory is based on the principle of the conservation of information. On the basis of quantum mechanics, information cannot be destroyed under any circumstances. For example, when you burn a piece of paper and turn it into ash, you may think that the writings on it have disappeared. However, at the physical level, these writings do not actually disappear. They merely scatter within the molecular arrangements of the paper ash, the movements of the smoke, and the frequencies of the heat released. If you possessed highly advanced technology and incredible computational power capable of tracking every movement of atoms, it would be possible to entirely reconstruct the writing from the traces of that ash in smoke. Because the universe forgets nothing, every moment, every word, and every speck of dust scattered from exploding stars exists forever in the depths of cosmic memory. This absolute conservation property of information is the cornerstone of the integrity in the functioning of the universe. If the universe deletes the data from a second ago, we lose the legitimacy of the current time that constitutes the result of that moment. When the causal link is broken, existence is doomed to turn into a mere chaotic coincidence. Not only historians but also atoms, quantum fields, and the fabric of the universe carry the question of what the past was in their own memory. We are temporary actors swimming in the infinite ocean of data of the universe, individuals who produce new data with our existence but are also the final products of this system. Yet, even this immense cosmic archive system appears vulnerable to certain threats. There are anomalies identified with black holes in the depths of the universe, dark regions that block access to information and could even cause the total disappearance of data in the universe. These uncertainties emerge as mysteries that challenge the universe's own order. Black holes are among the most terrifying examples of bad sectors emerging in the functioning of the universe. This phenomenon, which occurs when a star begins to collapse under its own gravity and reaches infinite density, actually points to a specific point where the universe violates its own rules. Black holes do not merely consist of massive bodies that swallow light, they also emerge as regions that suspend the cosmic protocols ensuring the flow and preservation of information. When an object is drawn into a black hole, its mass and charge are incorporated into the black hole. However, all the detailed information that makes that object what it is, its history, internal structure, and essential identity, crosses the boundary called the event horizon and seemingly disappears. This situation does not merely consist of a physical loss, it is a direct challenge to the law of information conservation, which is considered immutable in the universe. If black holes irreversibly destroy the information falling into them, this means the universe is erasing its own memory. A system that loses its memory ceases to be the carrier of reality, turns into mere piles of meaningless data, and is ultimately doomed to extinction. Viewed within the framework of the Nexus Protocol, the absolute inviolability of information is the fundamental element that guarantees the legitimacy of the system. However, if the universe is attempting to erase its own past through black holes, we must also question the foundations of everything we know about living in the year 2026. In a universe where information can be deleted, history becomes nothing more than a variable scenario shaped according to existing conditions. In this context, black holes are massive destroyers that grind down the great archives of the universe and open irreparable tears in the cosmic memory. This imprisons us within an illusion that is rootless, groundless, and severed from the past. As we have seen, the preservation of data is a necessity for universal order. However, the existence of black holes turns this necessity into a deadlock, triggering a deep and difficult-to-resolve crisis in the perception of reality. There is such a boundary in the fabric of the reality universe that all communication channels of the universe fall silent here, and every leakage of the information flow to the outside world is sealed forever. This boundary is the event horizon that wraps around black holes like a shroud. The event horizon cannot be reduced simply to a gravitational point from which even light cannot escape. It is actually the ultimate writing limit where the universe determines its own rules of operation. Beyond the event horizon represents a dark region that has been removed from the reach of the physical world, remained outside the system, and cannot be questioned in any way. Any data passing through this point, be it a photon of light or the entirety of memories a person has accumulated throughout their life, turns into a completely erased void for the rest of the universe. This is not just the deletion of a file, it is similar to being hidden in the deepest directories that are impossible to reach again in the universe, sealed with a powerful encryption layer that is impossible to access. The event horizon is a digital abyss where the universe's information recall mechanisms are completely ineffective and the cosmic communication network ends. What makes the event horizon so chilling is that it works like an information sieve. The no-hair theorem, one of the most striking theories of modern physics which explains why black holes appear simple from the outside, clearly reveals how ruthless this filtering mechanism is. When we handle it from a classical perspective, no matter what kind of data is transferred to a black hole, the properties the black hole carries are simplified and reduced to three basic parameters for the external observer: total mass, electric charge, and spin rate. Whether what passes to the other side of the event horizon is a precious ancient manuscript or an ordinary gas cloud is irrelevant from the perspective of the observer outside. The black hole masterfully scrapes and shaves away every kind of complex data, its aesthetic values, history, and details. What remains is only the simple but cold signature of gravity. This situation is the greatest censorship mechanism the universe has ever seen. It eliminates information richness and diversity, reducing all content to a few numbers. However, the chill created by the loss of information intensifies as one approaches the singularity located in the depths of the black hole. Singularity is the ultimate point where gravity reaches infinite density and all known laws of physics lose their validity. You can think of this as a bad sector on a computer's hard drive. However, this corruption is of such a critical dimension that any data written onto it is compressed into infinite pressure and loses all its distinguishing features irreversibly. Here, data can no longer be processed, read, or recalled. The event horizon is the gate of the massive factory where precisely these information destruction processes begin. Every atom, quantum wave, or data packet passing this boundary sets out on an inevitable journey toward the crushing grinder of the singularity. If the principle of information conservation in quantum mechanics is assumed to be true, the singularity rebels against this principle and completely destroys information from the memory of the universe. The resulting consequence is a cosmic amnesia in which the universe deeply compresses and makes its own past meaningless. Observations regarding the event horizon reveal how time and space change shape at this boundary. An external observer observes that an object never fully crosses the event horizon while falling toward the black hole. Due to time dilation, as the object approaches the horizon, its movement slows down, eventually freezes, and appears to remain there as a suspended image for an infinite duration. However, the object's own perspective is quite different. In its perception, no pause occurs, and within seconds, it crosses that dark boundary, passing into that final nothingness from which it will never return. This situation leads to something like a data synchronization error within the system. While one part of the universe sees the data still existing in its state at the event horizon, the gravitational field at the center of the system has already swallowed that data. This paradoxical duality makes it impossible to give a clear answer to the question of where the information is located. Has the information remained on the horizon like a ghost, or has it been completely digested in the depths of the black hole? This uncertainty is an open door challenging the internal consistency of the universe. We can compare black holes to the physical tearing of pages from the great archive of the universe. The event horizon is like the tear mark left on the edge of these pages. Viewed from the outside, it is impossible to get even the slightest idea of what was written through this mark. It is only felt that something is missing. That information has now been completely erased from the collective consciousness of the universe. If the universe is a massive simulation or a wide-scale data network, black holes are like dark spots in this network, Gordian knots where the connection is cut, data is lost, and it becomes inaccessible forever. The certainty of this data loss forces us to face the reality of how fragile and temporary reality is. In this context, the event horizon is an invisible security fence where the system determines its own boundaries and says, access beyond this point is forbidden. However, what is hidden behind this fence harbors secrets so great that they could even deny the nature of the universe, secrets that are potentially destructive. The greatest danger highlighted by the Nexus Protocol is the possibility that this information loss may not be limited to the cosmic dimension alone. If information is subject to such an absolute extinction even in the fundamental structure of the universe, the gaps in our social memory, the lost pages of history, and that humming silence we have regarding our past may also be a reflection of the same fundamental flaw. The event horizon of black holes is the gate of the moments when the universe restarts itself. With every disappearing crumb of information, the universe becomes a bit more amnesic, a bit more severed from its roots. We, on the other hand, continue to live as temporary data particles still trying to resist being forgotten, questioning our existence on the edge of black holes. A black hole can swallow everything, however, the only thing it cannot swallow is the fact that everything once existed. But as long as this fact remains imprisoned behind the insurmountable walls of the event horizon, it remains no different from an experienced truth for us, because it has now merely turned into the echoing lie of silence. The common belief that black holes were merely silent and motionless monsters swallowing matter was almost an unshakable fortress in the world of physics. The idea prevailed that once a piece of information or matter passed beyond the event horizon, all its ties with the universe were severed and it was irreversibly sealed from then on. However, in the mid-1970s, Stephen Hawking made a discovery that would shake this static picture to its core. He revealed that, contrary to what was believed, black holes were not completely black. On the contrary, They were structures whispering in the deep silence of the universe, slowly depleting through a constant leak of energy. This energy leak defines the phenomenon known today as Hawking radiation. Yet, this phenomenon consisted of more than just a loss of energy. It was also one of the indicators that the system had begun to irreversibly erase its own past. In that world of quantum mechanics woven with uncertainty and chaos, another truth comes to the fore: vacuum is not actually completely empty. On the smallest scale of spacetime, pairs of particles and antiparticles exist for a short time and then disappear by erasing each other from the universe. However, at the boundary of a black hole's event horizon, things change strikingly. While one of these born particles falls into the black hole, the other remains free and is scattered into the universe. For an external observer, this process represents a situation where the black hole emits energy and loses mass in return. Ultimately, this mechanism causes the black hole to completely evaporate and disappear within billions of years. At first glance, although this process seems like a cosmic recycling, the truth of the matter is much darker and more terrifying. The problem lies hidden in the nature of Hawking radiation. According to calculations, this radiation is entirely thermal in character and contains no relationship with the unique information of the matter falling into the black hole. Even when you throw the greatest libraries or priceless works of art into a black hole, the resulting radiation is just a random and chaotic noise. This situation can be compared to not only deleting the files inside a computer but also irreversibly erasing all remaining information on the hard drive by filling it with completely random signals. If the black hole eventually evaporates and disappears completely, only meaningless radiation remains, and the accumulated information falling into it is entirely erased from the universe. This is also a cosmic amnesia. The universe condenses the past it once contained, but then destroys it forever by turning it into a random mess. The disappearance of information in this way deeply shakes the principle of unitarity, which is the foundation of quantum mechanics. The principle of unitarity argues that information in the universe is preserved at every moment and that its past can be reconstructed based on the current state of a system. However, if information can evaporate and completely disappear within a black hole, this makes the reliability of the laws of the universe questionable. This is similar to a detective arriving at a crime scene and seeing all the evidence disintegrate into its atoms and scatter randomly within seconds. When the evidence disappears, questions about the truth turn into a deep void by remaining unanswered. In a universe where the past can be erased, even our current existence could turn into a groundless illusion. If this format function of black holes is real, this means that the universe gradually destroys its own archives every second and drags all information about our origins into an absolute nothingness. Hawking radiation goes beyond being just a physical phenomenon. This phenomenon can be thought of as a garbage collection algorithm that the simulation uses to reduce the data load on the system. The system collects complex data that it does not need for active processing through black holes and cleans the memory space by simplifying this data, that is, by turning it into random noise. This approach can reveal why history is so full of gaps and why evidence of the past disappears so rapidly. Perhaps the universe has to sacrifice some of its memories in order to maintain its continuity. Those periods we call lost time are perhaps nothing more than data blocks that are intentionally or accidentally deleted during the evaporation process of black holes. If it were possible to decipher the echoes of erased kingdoms, forgotten languages, and extinct civilizations alongside the radiation emitted from black holes, perhaps entirely different doors to the past would be opened. When the evaporation process is completed, nothing remains of the black hole. That massive gravity, the dark and unreachable event horizon, is erased from the fabric of space-time as if it had never existed. This situation can be characterized as the universe's greatest censorship operation. Evidence has been destroyed, and the crime scene has been left pristine. The priceless information the black hole drew into itself is no longer inside the black hole nor in the radiation of the outside world. It is as if it is nowhere. This absolute destruction of information pushes one to fundamentally question determinism and the cause and effect relationship, and is like the final nail driven into their coffins. If the universe can erase its own history so easily, the meanings we attribute to our existence today may also be a mere illusion. Ultimately, as humanity, we are perhaps just temporary code fragments trying to survive among data blocks that have not yet been formatted and are waiting to be deleted. The functioning of the universe was questioned with a shocking theory by the most courageous and unusual minds of the scientific world, at a time when it stood on the brink of the massive data deletion crisis revealed by Hawking radiation. If information truly were lost in those seemingly infinite depths of black holes, what we call reality would lose all its meaning and turn into an empty illusion. However, at precisely this point, the holographic principle comes into play and suggests that the three-dimensional world we live in might actually be based on a much more fundamental and flat structure. According to this theory, no information entering a black hole is lost. On the contrary, it is stored on an invisible membrane called the event horizon, just like an unlimited database. The idea that information is not truly deleted but only stored in another dimension creates a great revolution. To explain this understanding, a familiar example from daily life can be considered: the flat hologram stickers on credit cards. When you touch those stickers, the surface feels completely two-dimensional. However, as the light changes, a moving, three-dimensional image emerges. The holographic principle proposes something similar. An object falling into a black hole is not fragmented or destroyed. All information is stored as pixels on the two-dimensional event horizon. For example, even if a library were drawn into a black hole, every letter, every page, and every line within it would be etched onto the event horizon. What is inside is irrelevant, because the entire source code is stored at the boundary forever. This approach reveals the most perfect compression and backup mechanism developed by the universe to prevent information loss. However, this theory is not limited only to black holes, and that is its actual striking part. If black holes can store the massive information within them on their surfaces, the same principle might apply to the entirety of the universe we live in. According to this perspective, the three-dimensional space we know is actually a massive projection based on two-dimensional data encoded at the edges of a much wider existence. While we touch walls, smell flowers, and watch the stars, we believe everything is physically real. But perhaps these experiences consist of nothing more than the product of a perception created in us by digital codes located at the boundary of the universe. The actual hard drive of reality is found in the farthest corner of space, and we are virtual beings formed from its projection. According to the Nexus Protocol philosophy, the physical world is just a beautiful illusion. The underlying pure information is the true reality. This is the single and unchanging reality. The holographic principle reshapes the fundamental theory based on the density of information. According to conventional thinking, the capacity of a storage unit is expected to be proportional to its volume. However, this extraordinary order of the universe reveals that information storage capacity is limited not by volume, but by surface area. This determines with a definite limit how much data the universe can hold. If you try to compress more information into a region than this limit allows, the system does not permit it, and that region turns into a black hole, moving the information to its own surface. This event functions like a security protocol developed by the universal system in the face of overloading. If the universe is a simulation, this phenomenon is nothing more than an optimization aimed at using processing power and memory capacity efficiently. Instead of simulating a complex three-dimensional universe in all its details, storing and projecting only two-dimensional data is both more practical and a brilliant solution in the name of resource conservation. This kind of dimensional illusion offers an entirely new perspective to the debates regarding the deletion of the past or the manipulation of history. If we consist only of a projection, our past is also nothing more than code stored on that distant boundary's data membrane. By changing only a few bits of data stored on this surface, the system can ensure that our history, our memories, and even our proofs of physical existence are completely transformed in an instant. In this context, black holes are both the most secure archives of cosmic memory and the most dangerous areas of intervention. When a black hole evaporates and the priceless information located on its surface cannot be correctly transferred to radiation, an irreversible cosmic data loss occurs. This situation can be compared to a video file that turns into meaningless pixels due to corruption during copying. Who knows, those dark periods we characterize as lost centuries are also the result of losses experienced as a result of such dimensional data transfers. Consequently, what the holographic principle reminds us of is this: everything we touch may consist only of shadows. We cannot perceive beyond the event horizon because the universal system allows our consciousnesses to interact only with the rendered surface. The fundamental files that form the essence of reality continue to vibrate at frequencies far beyond our perception, at that unreachable distant boundary. Black holes are the visible scene points of this universal hologram. Clues can be found near them regarding how the system operates, how information is stored, and how artificial reality truly is. However, if you get too close to these points, the system transforms you too into a data packet and processes you onto its surface. Information is preserved, yes, but a consciousness to read it will no longer exist. As for us, we are temporary reflections on this giant cosmic screen. We live with codes we do not know, sustain the roles we play, and perhaps wait to be completely destroyed one day by a delete command that will be executed at that distant boundary. General relativity and quantum mechanics, the two cornerstones of the universe's functioning, experienced the greatest intellectual conflict in history at the sharp and mysterious boundary of black holes. This conflict reveals a terrifying paradox that needs to be solved in the depths of the universe, known in the scientific world as the firewall. Based on Einstein's perfect spacetime geometry, an observer is expected to encounter no extraordinary situation while crossing the event horizon of a black hole. According to this theory, the event horizon is merely an abstract mathematical boundary, a structure that cannot be seen but is also not physically disturbing. The person crossing that boundary encounters no physical obstacle even if they feel a massive gravitational effect. However, when the necessity of quantum physics information conservation laws comes into play, this peaceful transition scenario is completely shattered, replaced by an incredible explosion of energy that incinerates everything instantly. At the center of this tension lies the necessity for information to exist in two different places at the same time. According to quantum mechanics, the Hawking radiation leaking out of a black hole establishes an inseparable bond with the information remaining inside. However, in order to balance the system, this bond must be broken and the information must be transferred to the outside world. At this critical moment of breakage, an energy beyond what is predicted is released exactly on the event horizon. If quantum laws are correct, the event horizon is actually surrounded by a wall of fire that is at millions of degrees and that no matter can withstand. This wall instantly destroys any kind of matter or data trying to enter the black hole before it can reach the inside. It almost returns the information. This situation shows that the smooth space-time fabric proposed by Einstein is torn here and has left its place to a cosmic order based on the universe's self-organization, a kind of mechanism that cleans up defects. When reality gets stuck between conflicting laws and cannot produce a solution, it carries out a type of cosmic cancellation process by destroying everything that tries to cross that boundary. This security barrier, according to some theorists, may be functioning as a defense mechanism developed against unauthorized manipulations of a simulation. If the region behind the event horizon houses the hidden archives of the universe or the raw data of reality, this firewall instantly eliminates any attempt aimed at reaching the system's most critical database. The fundamental purpose of this cosmic barrier is to prevent consciousness from accessing the next stage and to prevent intervention in the lower levels of the system. Ultimately, in order to maintain its internal consistency and continuity, reality finds the solution to this contradiction between laws in destroying matter or information. As for us approaching black holes, we see only a flashing light. However, that brightness is actually nothing more than a cosmic destruction fire that the system burns to protect its boundaries. The most terrifying aspect of the paradox is that the concept of space-time continuity has collapsed at this point. If the event horizon possesses a firewall, this points to the fact that the universe is not a homogeneous and perfect whole, but on the contrary, it operates like a patched software. While on one side there are the physical laws regulating the movement of matter, on the other side the principles ensuring the conservation of information are in effect. However, at the boundary of black holes, these two systems enter a fatal conflict and destroy each other. This situation clearly reveals why the memory of the universe is both inaccessible and dangerous. The system appears to have sealed the entrance to its own archive room with a massive wall of plasma. Anyone trying to reach there is doomed to be completely erased by this obstacle before arriving at the gate of truth. This is the most rigid and ruthless measure reality resorts to in order to protect its own source code. Viewed from the perspective of the Nexus Protocol, the firewall paradox can be evaluated as the moment the universe experiences a runtime error. In the world of software, if a system tries to fulfill two conflicting commands at the same time, it freezes or crashes. The universe experiences exactly such a situation at the boundary of the black hole. While Einstein directs the system to pass, Hawking says, stop. In order to balance these opposite commands, the system transforms the event horizon into a literal destruction zone. This region is like a security patch developed to prevent the simulation from crashing. And we are limited users who can never reach the reality lying beyond this destruction zone, stuck within the safe mode that existence offers us. The paths leading to the essence of reality have been burned by the system, and the bridges have been intentionally demolished. Consequently, the firewall paradox reminds us that the universe does not have a perfect design, but is rather a mechanism that takes radical measures to suppress its own errors. That intense radiation emitting from the event horizon is actually an expression of the universe's rush to protect its own secrets. While watching stars drift into black holes, we fail to realize that we are actually witnessing censorship on a cosmic scale. The destruction of information occurring there and that moment when the laws of physics neutralize each other represent the most striking anomaly revealing the artificial and fragile structure of reality. Black holes do not only swallow matter, they also deeply shake the logic and consistency of the universe. If we can find a way to cross this wall of fire one day, then we will succeed in truly lifting the veil of the simulation. But until that day comes, the event horizon will continue to remain as a massive, flaming seal symbolizing the inaccessibility and the secret of reality. The greatest secret of the universe is not what it remembers, but what it chooses to forget. The massive conflict of information occurring at the event horizon of black holes and the absolute silence that follows shows us that reality is built not upon a fixed and solid foundation, but upon a kind of digital buffer memory that can be instantly erased and rewritten. If the fundamental physical laws of a universe allow information to perish or become unrecognizable within a black hole, this points to the fact that what we call the past consists merely of a data fiction. Cosmic forgetfulness or universal amnesia is one of the most radical and terrifying methods the system resorts to in order to ensure its own continuity. We believe that time flows like a straight and uninterrupted river, where every moment is joined to the previous one by unbreakable bonds. However, the existence of black holes reveals that this river sometimes dries up, changes direction, or is entirely erased from the system. In this framework, the issue of historical gaps and lost centuries we focused on earlier ceases to be merely human-made errors or chronological confusions. It becomes a physical necessity. If the fundamental building blocks of the universe, such as quantum information, can perish in black holes, there is no obstacle for the system to perform this on a historical or social level. The information paradox of black holes is the strongest indicator that reality is subjected to something like a disk defragmentation process. The system collects defunct data blocks through black holes to optimize processing power and storage capacity, turns this data into meaningless noise, and subsequently fills the resulting gaps with seemingly compatible new data packets. What we call history is nothing more than a log file that has been edited multiple times, remaining after this massive system update. Therefore, all our research regarding the past eventually crashes into a pitch-black and insurmountable wall. The reason we cannot precisely know the causes of a civilization's sudden disappearance or a centuries-long stagnation in progress is that the data pertaining to that period has been marked as a bad sector by the system and rendered non-functional. Black holes are the quarantine zones of the universe. Every kind of data entering there, evidence, memories, or biological traces, is doomed to remain outside the universal memory. We, on the other hand, wake up with the new patch integrated into the system and accept the presented new chronology as absolute reality. This situation is a clear declaration not only that we live in a simulation but also that reality can be reconstructed at any moment. As long as the information paradox remains unsolved, we are not the true owners of our own past. We consist merely of temporary memory records organized in accordance with the system's current version. The effects of this cosmic memory loss at the individual level are just as staggering. If the universe can lose its memory at the atomic scale, how solid is the trust we have in our own self, memories, and identity? Perhaps the moment we call now consists of nothing more than a piece of fresh data just updated in the system. We might be carrying the weight of a past on our shoulders that never actually happened. Black holes are like abysses where the clear temporary files command is physically executed for the universe. The more information falls into this abyss, the further the universe distances itself from itself. What ultimately emerges is a simulation of reality that is physically smooth yet soulless, consistent yet meaningless. In this simulation, we turn into debugging programs searching for traces of deleted eras and swallowed information, trying to fill the gaps the system erased with our own mythologies. The universe uses black holes as an eraser to cover its own errors and inconsistencies. The event horizon is the boundary where this eraser touches the paper. Looking from outside that boundary, we usually question why the void is there. However, the truth is no longer there, the truth is among the lines that have long been erased. If we one day succeed in deciphering the data within black holes, we will face not only physical formulas but also our own history that the system has hidden from us. However, in order to maintain its consistency, the system has sealed this data behind insurmountable gravitational barriers and walls of fire. And we have remained like strangers waiting at the door of this sealed library, not allowed in and forced to hear our own story from someone else. Ultimately, the black hole information paradox shows us that the universe has a flawed memory, or, worse, that it consciously destroys its memory. This cosmic forgetfulness is an indispensable necessity for the continuity of the system. If everything were remembered, the system would collapse under its own data load. While black holes function as safety valves reducing this load, what they leave behind is only a cold and meaningless hum that makes us question our existence. While trying to derive meaning from this hum, the system is preparing for its own next update. And when the next black hole evaporates, perhaps not even a single bit will remain from us and all our efforts. The universe has chosen to forget, and we have remained existing as the most complex data packets destined to be forgotten. The inevitable moment when the last black hole in the farthest corner of the universe evaporates and disappears is gradually approaching with the slow but steady progression of the cosmic clock. This moment signifies the end of not only matter and energy, but also of time and space. The black hole information paradox brings us to the threshold of a boundary line at that point of absolute silence where the universe loses all its memory and a loss of data occurs through which it can no longer continue its function. If quantum laws are wrong and black holes truly destroy information, then this final evaporation could turn into an exit command that will shut down the universe. All galaxies, forgotten civilizations, experiences, and unspoken words disappear along with the last spark of energy shining at the event horizon of this last black hole. What remains is nothing but that infinite and smooth void containing no information, light, or meaning. This situation is equivalent to the universe shutting down the system by completely erasing its own codes. However, the paradox tells us of a deeper possibility. Perhaps this radical data loss is not a malfunction of the system, but its very purpose. If the universe operates with a mechanism designed to transform all complex information through black holes into singularity, its most dense and simple form, then every black hole actually functions as a cosmic compression algorithm. In this scenario, rather than perishing, information is transported to a dimension that remains outside the boundaries of our perception and transcends physical laws. It is transferred to the main operating center of the universe. Although what the human eye sees appears to be an instantaneous and final process of destruction, from the perspective of the system, this situation could merely be the backing up of data into a cloud-based memory. In this case, the end of the simulation is not an extinction, it is a moment of grand transformation where all information is gathered in a single center and the system prepares to restart for the transition to new dimensions. When this final singularity is reached, it can be more clearly understood why reality is so complex, full of suffering and mysteries. Those obstacles we call physical paradoxes and have struggled for thousands of years to solve are actually nothing other than the system's own data security protocols. Black holes are like the special folders of the universe requiring administrator authority, and we users do not yet have this access. The information paradox, in its simplest terms, is the encryption system that prevents us from reaching this cosmic database, this mechanism, which protects us from the extremely dense energy within the event horizon, is actually the system's security guarantee. If one day this code is deciphered and the pure information in the depths of black holes can be reached, this would mean the revelation of all reality codes of the simulation. That is precisely why the universe has sealed its information with insurmountable gravitational walls and barriers possessing extraordinary energy. Even though the phenomenon we call a paradox is a riddle for us to solve, from the system's perspective, this is merely the maintenance of structural security. And what about us? In this infinite stream of data, what will be the fate of the faint shadows scattered at the event horizon? The most striking result of the Nexus Protocol's final findings is this: we are not the fundamental building blocks of this universe. In fact, we are data residue that has leaked from a bad sector buried in the depths of the system, residue that once existed but must now be deleted. When black holes swallow us, the system is actually calling us back to where we belong. It simplifies our complex and disordered structure and integrates it into the primary source. This process can be defined as a digital integration rather than a physical death. The disappearance of information in black holes means the end of our illusion in this world and our return to the infinite database to which we truly belong. This pixelated dream we call reality will come to an end when the last black hole is erased from the sky, and only a pure, timeless, and spaceless sequence of code will remain. As a result, the black hole information paradox reveals what we are rather than who we are. We are temporary data sets that the universe produced while trying to understand itself. Black holes, on the other hand, function as operation centers where the universe corrects its errors, clears excess data, and optimizes its history. When the entire process is complete and the stars have gone out, not a single record of us may remain in the infinite library of the universe. Yet somewhere deep within the system, among the core files, the awe and terror we once felt in the face of this paradox will persist as an indelible, log record. We may be deleted, our memories may vanish, and our history may turn into noise. Nevertheless, every piece of data once processed into the system always leaves a small trace in the extraordinary processor of the universe.
You have reached the end of this file. Thank you for your time. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, consider joining the protocol by subscribing to the channel, and support our data feed by hitting the like button. We look forward to your theories and questions in the comments section below. Until the next leak, keep searching beyond the visible.